The shovel bit into red Georgia clay at 2:47 a.m., metal scraping stone in a rhythm Marcus Freeman had practiced only in his nightmares. Sweat carved rivers down his dark skin despite November's chill, each droplet catching moonlight before disappearing into earth that would soon swallow everything he'd ever loved. His daughter's Mickey Mouse backpack sat 15 feet away, propped against his truck's rear tire. Pink strap still looped as if waiting for small shoulders that would never carry it again. Behind him, the farmhouse windows glowed yellow. Inside, his mother hummed gospel hymns while folding laundry, completely unaware that her son was burying the reason she'd driven 8 hours from Atlanta. The grandmother who'd called yesterday, voice bright with excitement, "Baby, I'm coming to see my Amara. Been too long since I held that precious girl." Marcus drove the shovel deeper. His hands didn't shake anymore. That terrified him most of all. Marcus Elijah Freeman, born March 14, 1985, in Columbus, Georgia, had the kind of face that made church mothers whisper, "Good man," when he passed, strong jawline, contemplative eyes that seemed to carry old wisdom, a careful smile that never quite revealed his thoughts. At 39, he'd built a life that looked right from every angle. Assistant principal at Deerfield Middle School, deacon at First Baptist, volunteer coach for youth basketball. His hands were broad and capable, the hands of a man who could fix a carburetor or counsel a troubled teenager with equal competence. But Marcus Freeman was a stepfather, not a father, and that distinction had carved a canyon through his life that he'd spent 7 years trying to bridge. Amara Janelle Watson, born June 22, 2015, in Augusta, Georgia, came into his world like morning light through stained glass, beautiful, transformative, slightly fractured. She'd been 3 when he married her mother, with her hair in careful cornrows decorated with colored beads that clicked when she moved, and her grandmother's eyes that saw too much. Smart beyond her years. Watchful. The kind of child who asked why about everything until adults ran out of answers. Now 9 years old, Amara had grown into a girl who loved science, hated lima beans, and kept a journal hidden under her mattress where she wrote stories about magical kingdoms where stepmothers and stepfathers didn't exist because families were simply families, no prefixes needed. Evelyn Freeman, born April 3, 1988, in Atlanta, Georgia, was the gravitational center Marcus had been orbiting since they'd met at a teachers' conference in 2017. She taught 4th grade English, spoke with her hands, laughed with her entire body. Her natural hair formed a glorious crown of coils she wore with fierce pride. She'd been a single mother for 2 years when Marcus appeared in her life. Amara's biological father had left before the umbilical cord was cut, disappeared into the streets of Augusta with promises that dissolved like sugar in rain. Evelyn had built walls around her daughter, around herself. Marcus had spent years proving he deserved to be let inside. Dorothy Watson, born September 8, 1956, in Atlanta, Georgia, was Evelyn's mother, a retired nurse with steel in her spine and gospel in her voice. She'd raised Evelyn alone after Evelyn's father died in a factory accident when Evelyn was 7. Dorothy believed in 3 things absolutely: God's providence, a grandmother's intuition, and a sacred bond between blood relatives. She'd never fully warmed to Marcus. Not because he'd done anything wrong, but because he wasn't Amara's real father, a distinction she made without malice but with devastating consistency. "That's my grandbaby," she'd say, voice soft with possession. "My blood. My responsibility." The Freeman home sat on 4 acres outside Deerfield, Georgia, a renovated farmhouse with wraparound porch, vegetable garden, and a tire swing Marcus had hung from the massive oak in the backyard. Inside, everything suggested normalcy. Family photos arranged on the mantel, Amara's spelling tests magnetized to the refrigerator, Evelyn's lesson plans scattered across the kitchen table. The house smelled like lavender cleaning solution and whatever bread Evelyn had baked that morning. But houses keep secrets better than people. The walls remembered things the inhabitants wanted to forget. Marcus's workshop occupied the barn behind the house, a sanctuary where he restored vintage cars and built furniture with meditative focus. He'd retreat there after difficult days at school, losing himself in the smell of sawdust and motor oil, the clean logic of mechanical problems with mechanical solutions. Amara used to follow him there, small hands reaching for tools, asking endless questions about how engines worked, why wood grain ran in different directions, what made things break and how you fixed them. She'd stopped coming to the workshop 6 months ago. The change had been gradual enough that Evelyn hadn't noticed. Or had chosen not to notice. Amara grew quieter. Spent more time in her room. Stopped hugging Marcus goodnight. Started flinching when he touched her shoulder, a subtle recoil that lasted only a fraction of a second but felt like an earthquake. "She's just growing up," Evelyn said when Marcus mentioned it. "Girls that age get moody. It's normal." But Marcus had worked with middle school children for 15 years. He knew normal. This wasn't it. Deerfield, Georgia existed in that peculiar space between rural and suburban, close enough to Augusta for commuters but far enough that everyone knew everyone's business, and black families like the Freemans represented the town's slowly diversifying face. The school where Marcus worked served 600 students, 60% white, 30% black, 10% everything else. Marcus had been hired 5 years ago as part of a diversity initiative, a phrase that made him simultaneously proud and exhausted. He'd grown up in Columbus, raised by a single mother who cleaned houses and a grandmother who quoted scripture with the same frequency other people breathed. Education was religion in his household, the only acceptable path out of poverty, away from the streets that swallowed black boys with terrifying regularity. Marcus had been a good student, then a good teacher, then a good administrator. Good, always good. Never great, never terrible. Safe in the acceptable middle. Meeting Evelyn had felt like waking up. She'd been presenting at the conference about innovative literacy programs, standing at the podium with passion radiating from every gesture, and Marcus had sat in the back row feeling something dormant inside him stretch and open like a flower toward sun. After her presentation, he'd approached with a question about her methods, and she'd looked at him with those intelligent eyes and said, "You're not really asking about pedagogy, are you?" He'd laughed, surprised into honesty. "No ma'am, I'm not." Their courtship had been careful, adult, considerate. Evelyn introduced him to Amara only after 3 months, explaining first to her daughter that Mommy has a friend she likes very much, and he'd like to meet you. 3-year-old Amara had regarded Marcus with solemn assessment, then asked if he liked dinosaurs because dinosaurs were important. "I love dinosaurs," Marcus had said, which was technically a lie, but love could be learned. He'd proposed after 18 months, on Amara's 4th birthday, asking both Evelyn and Amara if they'd marry him. Amara had said yes first, delighted by the idea of a real daddy, like the other kids at her preschool had. Evelyn had cried and nodded and whispered, finally, like she'd been holding her breath for years. Dorothy Watson had attended the wedding with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You treat them right," she'd told Marcus during their only private conversation that day. "You remember they're my blood, not yours. You're the husband, the stepfather. But I'm her grandmother. Don't forget which bond is stronger." Marcus had nodded, swallowed the small hurt, told himself it was natural for a grandmother to be protective. The early years had been good, genuinely good, not performatively so. Marcus discovered he had a talent for fatherhood, even the step variety. He attended every school event, learned to braid Amara's hair, poorly at first, but practice improved him, invented bedtime stories about a girl scientist who solved mysteries. Amara called him Daddy Marcus, then shortened it to Daddy around age 6, and his heart had nearly exploded the first time. "Is that okay?" Evelyn had asked nervously. "I know she has a biological father somewhere." "I'm her father," Marcus had said firmly. "Biology doesn't make a man a dad. Showing up does." But showing up wasn't always enough. The cracks appeared slowly. Amara started kindergarten and learned that some kids had regular families, mom, dad, biological connection. She asked questions Marcus and Evelyn deflected. Where's my real daddy? Why did he leave? Did I do something wrong? The questions carved tiny wounds that accumulated like paper cuts. You didn't do anything wrong, baby, Evelyn would say. Your daddy Marcus is your real daddy because he chose to love you. But children sense lies even in truth. Amara's face would scrunch with confusion, dissatisfaction. She'd retreat to her room with that confusion unresolved. Dorothy's visits didn't help. She'd arrive bearing gifts for my grandbaby, emphasizing the possessive, and spend weekends reinforcing Amara's biological connection to her, to Evelyn, to a lineage that didn't include Marcus. Not maliciously, Dorothy genuinely believed she was giving Amara roots, identity, pride in her heritage. Your great-great-grandmother was a slave who escaped to freedom, Dorothy would tell Amara, voice resonant with history. Her blood runs in your veins. What's in blood? Strong black women who survived everything this country threw at them. Marcus would listen from the kitchen, feeling himself erased one story at a time. The change in Amara began last spring, shortly after her 9th birthday. Marcus noticed it first during their evening routine. She'd always helped him wash dishes after dinner, standing on a stool to reach the sink, chattering about her day. Suddenly she found excuses, homework, tiredness, stomach aches. When he'd insist, she'd comply but stay silent, body angled away from him. Did something happen at school? He'd ask. No. Did I do something to upset you? No. But she wouldn't meet his eyes. Evelyn attributed it to developmental changes. She's entering pre-adolescence. Girls pull away from father figures. It's textbook. But Marcus's training told him something different. He'd completed mandatory reporting courses every year, learned to recognize signs of trauma, abuse, distress. Amara exhibited several: withdrawal, sleep disturbances. Evelyn mentioned finding her awake at 2 a.m. multiple times, declining grades, anxiety. He suggested counseling. Evelyn resisted. We don't need strangers in our family business, she said, echoing her mother's philosophy. We handle things ourselves. Professional help isn't weakness. I said no, Marcus. Her tone carried finality that shut down discussion. So Marcus observed and worried and felt increasingly like an outsider in his own home. In June, he'd walked past Amara's room and heard her crying, not loud, but the suppressed sobbing of someone trying not to be heard. He'd knocked gently. Baby girl. Can I come in? The crying stopped immediately. I'm fine. You don't sound fine. Please go away. The rejection had physical weight. Marcus stood outside her door feeling helpless, useless, less than. Finally he'd retreated to his workshop and worked on an engine until midnight, hands busy while his mind spiraled through possibilities. Bullying. Friendship drama. Internet exposure to something traumatic. Or something worse. The thought arrived unwelcome and persistent: what if someone was hurting her? But who? Marcus mentally catalogued her life: school, teachers he knew, trusted, church, congregation they'd been part of for years. Family, himself, Evelyn, Dorothy occasionally, no one else with regular access. The logic didn't compute. In July, Marcus's mother Martha called from Atlanta, voice bright with plans. I'm coming to visit for a few days. Haven't seen you all since Easter. I miss my son and my step-grandbaby. Martha Freeman had embraced Amara completely, never used the step prefix except when referring to herself, always brought Amara gifts, remembered every detail of her life. She was everything Dorothy wasn't: warm toward Marcus, accepting of the blended family, content with her role. That'd be wonderful, Mama, Marcus said. Amara will be so excited. But when he told Amara about the visit, her reaction was strange. Her face went very still, very careful. Grandma Martha is coming? Yes, baby. For a whole weekend. When? Next month. August. Something flickered across Amara's face, calculation, then forced brightness. That's nice. The performance of it chilled Marcus. 9-year-olds shouldn't be that good at hiding their emotions. August arrived heavy with humidity and tension Marcus couldn't name. Martha's visit was pleasant on the surface. They grilled out, played board games, attended church together. But Marcus watched Amara carefully and saw the performance continue. She laughed at appropriate moments, hugged Grandma Martha when prompted, played the role of happy granddaughter with disturbing competence. Only once did the mask slip. Marcus caught Amara staring at him across the dinner table, her expression unreadable but intense. When he smiled at her, she looked away quickly, pushing food around her plate. That night, Marcus heard Evelyn and Amara arguing, muffled voices through walls. He moved closer, guilt warring with concern. "Can't tell anyone," Evelyn was saying. "Do you understand?" "Nobody. But Grandma. Especially not Grandma. She wouldn't understand." "I don't understand either." "You don't need to understand. You just need to be quiet." Silence. Then Amara's small voice, "It's wrong, Mama." "Don't you tell me what's wrong," Evelyn's voice sharpened. "I'm your mother. I know what's best for this family." Marcus's stomach clenched. He should intervene, ask what was happening. But something, cowardice, maybe, or fear of what he'd discover, kept him frozen in the hallway. The next morning, Martha left. Amara hugged her goodbye and whispered something Marcus couldn't hear. Martha's expression shifted, concern clouding her features, but before she could respond, Evelyn swept in with bright chatter about the drive back to Atlanta, and the moment passed. September brought cooler weather and escalating strangeness. Marcus found Amara's journal while changing her bed sheets. It had fallen between the mattress and frame. He shouldn't have read it. He knew that. But the first page was open, and his eyes caught his own name. "Daddy Marcus doesn't know. Mama says if he knew, he'd leave us. Grandma Dorothy would be so mad she might take me away. So I have to keep the secret even though it makes my stomach hurt and I can't sleep and I hate." The entry ended there, next page torn out. Marcus stood holding the journal, hands trembling. What secret? What was he supposed to not know? The urge to read further warred with respect for his daughter's privacy, but ultimately privacy won, barely. He tucked the journal back carefully and spent the rest of the day trying not to imagine what words might fill those pages. He decided to talk to Evelyn that night, in bed with lights out, darkness making confession easier. "Something's wrong with Amara." Evelyn stiffened beside him. "What do you mean?" "She's withdrawn. Anxious. I found her journal, just saw one page, I didn't read it. But she wrote about keeping secrets. From me. From your mother." Long silence. Then, "Kids keep secrets, Marcus. It's part of growing up. Not secrets that make them lose sleep. Not secrets that make them cry at night. Evelyn, I think something's happened to her." Someone might be, he couldn't finish the sentence. "No." Evelyn's voice was steel. "Nobody's hurting her. I'd know. I'm her mother." "Then what's the secret?" "I don't know." Too quick, too defensive. She was lying. Marcus sat up, turned on the bedside lamp. Evelyn blinked against the sudden light, and he saw fear in her eyes, real, visceral fear. "Baby, talk to me. Whatever it is, we can handle it together." "There's nothing to handle. You're lying." Her face crumpled. For a moment, he thought she'd confess whatever darkness had infected their family. But then her expression hardened into something he didn't recognize, cold, resolved, unreachable. "Leave it alone, Marcus. I mean it. Some things are better left alone." The catalyst came on a Tuesday in late October, ordinary in every way except its consequences. Dorothy had called Monday evening to announce she'd be visiting for the weekend, driving up Friday morning, staying through Sunday. "Need to see my grandbaby," she'd said. "Feels like forever since I held her." Evelyn had agreed with unusual enthusiasm, and Marcus had felt relief. Maybe Dorothy's presence would break whatever toxic pattern had established itself. Maybe an outsider's perspective would force honesty. Tuesday morning began normally. Marcus made breakfast, scrambled eggs, turkey bacon, toast, while Evelyn packed Amara's lunch. Amara appeared in the kitchen pale and quiet, dark circles under her eyes suggesting another sleepless night. "Morning, baby girl," Marcus said. "Eggs?" She shook her head. "Not hungry. You need to eat something." "I said I'm not hungry." The outburst was so uncharacteristic that both Marcus and Evelyn froze. Amara's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll eat." She choked down half a piece of toast and left for the bus stop without hugging either parent goodbye. Marcus watched her go, that familiar helplessness rising. "We need to take her to a doctor. Something's really wrong." "I'll call the pediatrician," Evelyn said, but her tone suggested she wouldn't. Marcus went to work and spent the day distracted, checking his phone compulsively for texts from Evelyn or the school. None came. The day ground forward with meetings and student discipline issues and parent phone calls, all requiring attention Marcus couldn't quite summon. He arrived home at 4:30 p.m. to find Evelyn's car in the driveway, which was unusual. She typically stayed at school until 5:30 finishing paperwork. Marcus walked through the front door and immediately sensed wrongness, though he couldn't articulate why. The house was too quiet. No television sounds, no music, no Amara practicing her violin. "Evelyn. Baby. In here." Her voice came from the living room, strange and flat. Marcus walked in and stopped. Amara sat on the couch, small and hunched, face blotchy from crying. Evelyn stood by the window with her arms crossed, radiating tension. Between them, the air felt explosive. "What happened?" Marcus asked. "Tell him," Evelyn said to Amara. Amara shook her head violently. "Tell him, or I will." "Mama, please." Amara wrote a letter, Evelyn interrupted. "To Grandma Dorothy." The school counselor found it in her backpack during a routine check after Amara fell asleep in class again. "The counselor called me." Marcus's pulse accelerated. "What did the letter say?" "Tell him," Evelyn repeated to Amara. The child's face crumpled. "I just wanted Grandma to know." "To know what?" Marcus knelt in front of her, gentle but insistent. "Baby, whatever it is, you can tell me. I promise you won't be in trouble." Amara looked at her mother, then back to Marcus. Her eyes held something ancient and terrible, too old for 9 years. "I told Grandma that Mama makes me keep a secret. About her and Uncle Terence." The world tilted. Marcus heard his own heartbeat suddenly loud in his ears. Uncle Terence? Evelyn's brother. Her younger brother Terence, who'd been deployed overseas with the army for the past year, recently returned stateside. Marcus had met him twice, both times brief, both times cordial but distant. Terence was quiet, intense, carried war in his eyes. What secret? Marcus's voice sounded strange to his own ears. Amara's words came in a rush. "He comes to visit when you're at work sometimes and Mama makes me go to my room, but I heard them once and they were. She dissolved into sobs. Marcus looked at Evelyn. Her face was stone. "Is this true?" "It's not what she's implying." "Is it true?" "Yes," Evelyn whispered. "Terence has been coming by." "But not, we weren't." She stopped, recalibrated. "It's complicated." The understatement was so massive Marcus almost laughed. Instead, he stood, walked to the window, pressed his forehead against glass that still held afternoon heat. How long? Marcus. How long? Since June. 4 months. 4 months of lies and secrets and performance. 4 months of whatever this was happening in his home while he was trying to educate children and serve his community and be good, always good. And Amara knew. She walked in once, Evelyn said. We were just talking, but it looked wrong. I told her she misunderstood, that it was innocent, but she threatened to tell you. To tell Mama. So I made her promise not to. Marcus turned. You manipulated our 9-year-old daughter into keeping your affair secret. It's not an affair. Terrence and I, we have history, complicated history from before you, and he came back different from the war, broken, and I was just trying to help. By what? Fucking him in our home? Amara flinched at the profanity. Marcus rarely cursed. We never, Evelyn stopped. Yes. Okay. Yes. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Marcus felt something inside him break, not dramatically but with quiet finality, like ice cracking on a frozen lake, the sound almost peaceful before the plunge into black water. Get out. Marcus, please. Get out. Take Amara. Go to your mother's. Go to Terrence's. Go anywhere. Just leave. This is my house too. I don't care. His voice was quiet, which made it more frightening. If you're here in 10 minutes, I'm calling the police. Evelyn stared at him, calculating. Then she grabbed her purse, her phone, and Amara's hand. Come on, baby. Amara resisted, looking back at Marcus. Daddy, I'm sorry. It's not your fault, Marcus said, and meant it. None of this is your fault. They left. Marcus stood alone in the living room as evening shadows lengthened, and thought about how completely a life could disintegrate. He'd built everything carefully, the career, the marriage, the family, the home. He'd been so good. And now it was rubble. His phone buzzed. Text from Evelyn, staying at Terrence's apartment. We need to talk when you've calmed down. Marcus threw his phone across the room. It hit the wall and shattered, screen splintering into a web of cracks that reminded him of his own interior landscape. Marcus spent Tuesday night in his workshop, hands busy with meaningless tasks while his mind circled the wreckage. He rebuilt a carburetor that didn't need rebuilding, sanded wood already smooth, organized tools already organized. Busy work to keep insanity at bay. Around midnight, a knock on the workshop door. Marcus looked up to find his neighbor, Gerald, a retired cop who lived on the adjacent property. Saw your lights on, Gerald said. Everything okay? Fine. Marcus, I've been a cop for 30 years. Nobody's fine when they're alone in a workshop at midnight. Something in the older man's voice broke Marcus's resolve. He told Gerald everything, words spilling out in a confession that felt simultaneously liberating and humiliating. Gerald listened without judgment, nodding occasionally. What should I do? Marcus asked when he'd finished. What do you want to do? I don't know. Divorce her. Keep Amara. Protect her from whatever damage this has caused. Gerald's expression shifted, became careful. Marcus, you understand your legal position here. What do you mean? You're a step-parent. Amara isn't biologically yours. If Evelyn fights you on custody, she'll win. And Dorothy will support her daughter, not you. The words landed like bullets. Marcus had never let himself think about it explicitly, but he'd always assumed that love counted for something legally. That 7 years of being a father meant he was a father. There has to be something. There might be, Gerald said slowly. If you could prove Evelyn was an unfit mother. Document the affair, the psychological harm to Amara, maybe get the school counselor's notes about the letter. I'm not trying to destroy Evelyn. I'm trying to protect Amara. Sometimes those are the same thing. Gerald left. Marcus sat in the dark workshop and let himself imagine a future without Amara, weekends alone, holidays silent, the gradual fade as Dorothy and Evelyn rebuilt their family unit without him. He'd become what he'd always feared. The temporary stepfather, the placeholder, the man who didn't count because he wasn't blood. No. He wouldn't allow it. Wednesday morning, Marcus called Evelyn. She answered on the third ring, wary. "We need to talk," he said. "Come home. Alone. Leave Amara with Terence." "Is that safe?" The question enraged him. "Safer than leaving her with you apparently." Evelyn arrived at noon, looking exhausted and defiant simultaneously. They sat at the kitchen table. The same table where they'd shared thousands of meals, made love once on a lazy Sunday morning, planned Christmases and vacations and Amara's future. Now it was a negotiation table. "I want full custody," Marcus said. Evelyn laughed bitterly. "You're not her father. I've been more of a father than her biological one ever was. Legally, you're nobody to her. A step-parent with no rights. Then I'll adopt her. You think I'll agree to that after you threw me out of our home?" Marcus leaned forward. "You betrayed me. You traumatized our daughter. You made her complicit in your lies. And you're acting like I'm the villain here. You don't understand what Terence and I don't care." Marcus's voice was granite. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to agree to adoption papers. I'm going to file for divorce. We're going to co-parent Amara with her best interests, not yours, not mine, at the center. And if I refuse, then I release the letter to Dorothy. I tell her everything, the affair, the manipulation of Amara, all of it. You know your mother. You know she'd never forgive you for what you've done." Evelyn's face went pale. "You wouldn't. Try me." The standoff lasted an eternity compressed into seconds. Finally, Evelyn looked away. "You bastard. I learned from the best." She left without another word. Marcus sat at the table and realized he'd just weaponized the one relationship Evelyn valued above all others. Her mother's approval, her mother's love, he'd made them hostages to his demands. The victory tasted like poison. That evening, Marcus called Dorothy. The conversation was delicate, strategic. He explained that he and Evelyn were having difficulties, needed some time apart, and he'd like to postpone her visit. What kind of difficulties? Dorothy's suspicion carried clearly through the phone. Just stress. Work. Life. Nothing serious. Where's Amara? With Evelyn. They're staying with Terence for a few days. Terence? Dorothy's tone sharpened. Why Terence? He has space. It's temporary. Put Amara on the phone. Marcus's mind raced. She's asleep, Miss Dorothy. Been having trouble sleeping lately. I don't want to wake her. Then have Evelyn call me when she wakes up. Of course. Marcus ended the call knowing he'd bought himself hours, maybe a day. Dorothy would call Evelyn. Evelyn would have to manufacture a story. The lies would compound, multiply, metastasize. Thursday passed in a fog. Marcus went to work, pretended normalcy, came home to emptiness. He sat in Amara's room, surrounded by her things, the posters of scientists and astronauts, the half-finished puzzle on her desk, the stuffed elephant she'd slept with since age 3. He picked up the elephant, pressed it to his face, breathed in the smell of her, strawberry shampoo and child sweat and innocence. His phone rang. Evelyn. Mama's coming tomorrow, she said without preamble. I couldn't put her off. She knows something's wrong. Where's Amara? Here. With me and Terence. How is she? Silence. Then, confused. Sad. Asking when she can come home. Tell her soon. Marcus, we can't keep lying to Mama. You started the lies, Evelyn. I'm just maintaining them until I figure out how to end this without Amara being destroyed in the process. She's my daughter. She's our daughter. And you don't get to use biology as a trump card after everything you've done. He hung up. Spent the night planning, thinking, spiraling. By Friday morning, he'd made a decision. He called Evelyn. Bring Amara home. Tell Dorothy there was a gas leak at Terrence's apartment building, so you came back early. I'll play along, we'll pretend everything's fine until after her visit. Then we deal with reality. Why would you do that? Because Amara deserves one normal weekend before everything falls apart. And because despite everything, I still love that little girl more than I love my own pride. Evelyn's voice cracked. You're a better person than me. I know. Friday afternoon, Dorothy arrived with luggage and suspicion. Marcus greeted her warmly, hugged her, helped carry her bags inside. Evelyn and Amara arrived an hour later, performance ready. Amara hugged her grandmother with genuine enthusiasm. At least Dorothy's presence was unambiguous, safe, uncomplicated by adult betrayals. My baby. Dorothy held Amara at arm's length, examining her. You look tired, sweet girl. I'm okay, Grandma. Okay isn't the same as good. That evening, they had dinner together, awkward but functional. Marcus and Evelyn played their roles competently, the married couple with temporary difficulties, nothing serious, just life stress. Dorothy watched them with sharp eyes that missed nothing but said little. After dinner, Dorothy took Amara to her room for their traditional girl talk. Marcus cleaned the kitchen while Evelyn disappeared to the bathroom for what he suspected was crying in private. He scrubbed dishes with methodical focus, found strange comfort in the familiar motion. He was drying the last plate when he heard Dorothy scream. Marcus ran. Took the stairs 3 at a time. Burst into Amara's room to find Dorothy standing over Amara's bed, the journal in her hands, her face contorted with horror. What is this? Dorothy's voice shook. What does this mean? Marcus looked at Amara, who sat curled against her headboard, face white with terror. He looked at the journal Dorothy clutched, the pages that held secrets he'd deliberately not read. Miss Dorothy, let me explain. Did you touch her? Dorothy's words came out strangled. Did you put your hands on my grandbaby? The accusation hit Marcus like a physical blow. What? No. Never. I would never. But Dorothy was reading aloud now, voice rising. I hate when Daddy Marcus comes to my room at night. Mama says I have to let him. Says it's normal. Says it's what families do. But it doesn't feel normal. It feels wrong and I can't tell anyone because, Dorothy's voice broke. Oh God. Oh Jesus God. Marcus felt reality fracture. No. No, that's not, I never. Dorothy, I swear to God I never touched her. Evelyn appeared in the doorway. Saw the journal. Saw her mother's face. And made a decision. I caught him, Evelyn whispered. Months ago. I caught him with her. I've been trying to protect her, trying to figure out what to do. You lying, Marcus lunged toward Evelyn, and Dorothy screamed, pulling Amara behind her. Get away from her. Dorothy's voice was primal. Get away from my grandbaby. I didn't do anything. Evelyn, tell her the truth. But Evelyn was crying now, convincing tears, mother's protective tears. I'm so sorry, Mama. I should have told you. I should have called the police. I was scared. Scared he'd hurt us. Marcus looked at Amara. The child's face held an expression he couldn't read, guilt. Fear. Confusion. Truth. Baby girl, he said, voice breaking. Tell Grandma the truth. Tell her I never touched you like that. Tell her. Amara opened her mouth. Closed it. Looked at her mother. Looked at her grandmother. Looked at Marcus with eyes full of tears and something that might have been apology. He did, she whispered. The world ended. Marcus sat in his truck in the high school parking lot at 11 p.m. Friday, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Dorothy had called the police. They'd come with lights but no sirens, professional and cautious. They'd questioned everyone separately. Marcus had denied everything, voice steady despite internal collapse. They'd photographed Amara's room, taken the journal as evidence, explained the process, investigation, possible charges, court dates. We'll be in touch, the lead detective said, a black woman named Williams with tired eyes who'd looked at Marcus like he was garbage pretending to be human. Dorothy had taken Amara and Evelyn to a hotel. Before leaving, she'd looked at Marcus with hate so pure it had physical weight. You'll pay for what you did. I'll make sure you pay. Marcus had stood in his empty house and felt something inside him die, hope, maybe, or faith in basic justice. He'd tried to be good. He'd followed every rule, fulfilled every responsibility, loved a child who wasn't biologically his with every fiber of his being. And now he was labeled a monster. He'd driven to the school parking lot because he couldn't stay in the house, couldn't face walls that had witnessed his life being destroyed. He sat in darkness and asked himself the questions that mattered. Did Amara believe what she'd said, or had she been coached? Had his actions, innocent actions, fatherly actions, been misinterpreted through the lens of Evelyn's guilt? Or worse, had Evelyn written the journal entries herself, manufacturing evidence to neutralize him before he could expose her affair? The uncertainty was acid eating through his sanity. His phone buzzed. Text from Gerald, asterisk, heard police were at your place. You okay? Asterisk. Marcus called him. Explained. Gerald listened and swore softly. This is bad, Marcus. Real bad. Allegations like this, even false ones, destroy lives. You need a lawyer. Good one. I don't have money for a lawyer. You'll find it. Because if you don't fight this, you're done. Career over, reputation destroyed, probably jail time. I didn't do anything. Doesn't matter. You're a black man accused of abusing a black girl by her black mother and grandmother. The system doesn't care about truth. It cares about optics and statistics and closing cases. Gerald was right. Marcus felt the stoic principles he'd studied, control, acceptance, discipline, rise up like armor around his wounded core. He couldn't control Dorothy's perception, Evelyn's lies, or the justice system's biases. But he could control his response. He would fight. Not with rage or violence, but with cold strategy and unshakable resolve. Saturday morning, Marcus hired a lawyer. A woman named Patricia Chen who specialized in family law and false accusations. She was expensive, required a retainer he couldn't afford but charged to credit cards anyway. She was also brilliant. Tell me everything, she said. Leave nothing out. Marcus did. Every detail of his relationship with Amara, the marriage, the affair discovery, the journal, the accusation. Patricia listened with the intense focus of a surgeon examining a patient. Here's our situation, she said when he finished. The journal is problematic. Those entries, if authenticated as written by Amara, are evidence. But we need to establish doubt. We need to prove either that Evelyn wrote them, or that she coached Amara on what to say. How? Handwriting analysis. Psychological evaluation of Amara. She'll be interviewed by experts who might detect coaching or false memory implantation. And we investigate Evelyn. Her affair, her motivations, her character. We paint her as a woman who would lie to protect herself. That feels dirty. Patricia's gaze was steel. You want to feel clean, or you want to stay out of prison? Marcus chose survival. The weekend passed in a blur of phone calls, document gathering, strategic planning. Patricia was thorough, demanding every piece of evidence that could support Marcus's innocence. Phone records showing when he'd been at work, testimony from colleagues about his character, Amara's previous therapy records, there were none, which was itself telling, the school counselor's notes about the letter. Sunday evening, Patricia called with an update. The detective interviewing Amara noticed inconsistencies. The girl can't provide specific dates or times for the alleged abuse. Her descriptions are vague. The forensic interviewer thinks she might be coached. Hope flickered. So they believe me? They're not convinced either way yet. But doubt is good. Doubt is what we need. Monday brought a new development. Terence called Marcus directly, voice heavy with conflict. We need to talk. They met at a diner on the edge of town, both men wary as circling dogs. Terence looked like hell, unshaven, gaunt, eyes carrying a darkness that went beyond war. Evelyn's lying, Terence said without preamble. Marcus's heart stopped. What? About you and Amara. She's lying. I know because she told me she was going to. After you kicked her out. She said the only way to protect herself was to make you the villain. She said you'd destroy her with Dorothy otherwise. Jesus Christ. Marcus put his head in his hands. I told her not to. Told her it was evil, using Amara like that. But she wouldn't listen. She wrote those journal entries herself, practiced Amara's handwriting. Made Amara memorize a story about you coming to her room. Terence's voice cracked. I'm a lot of things, Marcus. A cheater, a homewrecker, a terrible person. But I can't watch an innocent man go to prison. I can't watch that little girl be traumatized even more than she already is. Will you testify to this? I'll do better. I recorded our conversations. Evelyn doesn't know. I don't know, documenting my own spiral into hell, maybe. But I have her on tape admitting she was setting you up. Marcus felt something like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Why are you helping me? Terence met his eyes. Because my sister's become someone I don't recognize. And because that little girl deserves better than being weaponized by her own mother. You were good to Amara. I watched you with her before everything went wrong. You loved her. Really loved her. That's more than most biological fathers do. He slid a thumb drive across the table. Everything's on here. Give it to your lawyer. Marcus took it with trembling hands. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just protect Amara. When this blows up, she's going to need someone who actually gives a damn about her welfare. Terence left. Marcus sat alone with the thumb drive, feeling the stoic principle of acceptance settle into his bones. He couldn't control what had been done to him. But he could control what he did with the truth. Tuesday afternoon, Patricia Chen called the district attorney's office and requested an emergency meeting. She brought the thumb drive, handwriting analysis reports showing inconsistencies in the journal entries, and expert testimony about false accusation dynamics. The DA listened, stone-faced, then requested time to review the evidence. Wednesday morning, Detective Williams called Marcus. We need to re-interview Evelyn and Amara. Separately. Downtown. Today. Marcus understood what this meant. The case was cracking. He wasn't allowed to attend the interviews, conflict of interest, potential intimidation. But Patricia was there, observing through one-way glass. She called Marcus afterward with a report. Amara broke down during questioning. Admitted her mother made her practice a story. Said she was confused about what was real and what she was supposed to say. The forensic interviewer is excellent, very gentle, very patient. The child's telling the truth now. And Evelyn? Lawyerette up, refusing to answer questions. But they played her the recordings from Terrence. Her lawyer looked like she'd been punched. They're discussing possible charges against Evelyn: false reporting, child endangerment, perjury. Marcus felt no triumph. Only exhaustion and grief for everyone involved, especially Amara. What happens now? The DA drops the charges against you. Issues an apology, probably. And Child Protective Services gets involved. Amara's going into temporary foster care until the courts determine custody. Foster care. Marcus's voice rose. She doesn't need foster care, she needs to be home. She can't go home to Evelyn, and legally she can't go to you yet. I'm filing emergency adoption papers, but that takes time. Right now, the state needs to ensure she's safe. Marcus wanted to scream at the injustice, that Amara would be punished for her mother's sins, placed with strangers, traumatized again. But screaming wouldn't help. How long until I can see her? Soon. Maybe tomorrow. I'm pushing for supervised visits. Thursday evening, Marcus was finally allowed to visit Amara at the foster home. A pleasant enough house with a pleasant enough couple who'd raised dozens of foster children. He sat across from Amara at their kitchen table, with a social worker present, and searched for words that might bridge the canyon between them. Amara spoke first. I'm sorry, Daddy Marcus. Baby, you don't need to apologize. I do. I lied. I said you did bad things and you didn't. Mama made me practice what to say and I got confused and tears overwhelmed her voice. Marcus reached for her hand, remembered the social worker, pulled back. Amara, listen to me. None of this is your fault. Your mama made terrible choices. She put you in an impossible situation. But I don't blame you. Not even a little bit. But Grandma Dorothy hates you now. She thinks you're a bad person. She said I can't ever see you again. That hurt more than the false accusations. We'll figure it out. Will you still be my daddy? The question destroyed him. Marcus looked at this beautiful, wounded child who'd been failed by every adult who was supposed to protect her, and made a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. Always. No matter what happens, I'll always be your daddy. The social worker ended the visit after 30 minutes. Marcus left with Amara's tears echoing in his ears, knowing that promises were fragile things that broke under the weight of reality. Friday brought Dorothy. She called Marcus directly, voice cold. I need to speak with you. In person. They met at a coffee shop, neutral ground. Dorothy looked like she'd aged a decade in a week, grief and rage and betrayal carved into every line of her face. They sat across from each other, both wary, both armored. I owe you an apology, Dorothy said, and Marcus nearly fell out of his chair. What? The police told me everything. Played me the recordings. Explained what Evelyn did. Dorothy's hands trembled around her coffee cup. I accused you of something monstrous. I wanted to believe my daughter. But she lied. She used my grandbaby as a weapon. And I helped her do it because I believed blood was thicker than truth. Marcus didn't know how to respond. He'd imagined this conversation going 1,000 different ways, but contrition wasn't among them. I still don't think you're Amara's real father, Dorothy continued. That hasn't changed. But you're a good man. Better than most. And you loved that child when her own mother was willing to destroy her for selfish reasons. I still love her, Marcus said. I know. That's why I'm here. Dorothy reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of papers. Consent to adoption. I talked to a lawyer. As Amara's biological grandmother, I have standing to contest or approve adoption. I'm approving. I want you to be her legal father. Not because you've earned it, though you have. But because Amara needs stability, and you're the only one who's offered that consistently. Marcus stared at the papers, unable to process this reversal. There are conditions, Dorothy added. I want regular visits. I want input on major decisions. And I want you to help Amara understand her heritage, her family history. The Watson blood that runs in her veins. I can do that. One more thing. Dorothy's eyes hardened. Evelyn doesn't get to be her mother anymore. Not in any real sense. She's lost that right. I'll testify to that in court if needed. My daughter broke something sacred, and I can't protect her from consequences anymore. Marcus felt something like respect for this woman who'd chosen truth over blood. Thank you, Miss Dorothy. Don't thank me yet. You're taking on a damaged child. Therapy for years, probably. Trust issues. Anger. She's not going to be easy. I know. Good. Dorothy stood to leave, then paused. Marcus. Love isn't just biology. It's showing up. Consistently. You've shown up for 7 years. That counts for something. She left. Marcus sat alone with the consent papers, feeling the weight of responsibility and opportunity intertwine. The confrontation Marcus had been avoiding came Sunday evening. Evelyn appeared at his door unannounced, looking wild, hair uncombed, eyes red-rimmed, clothes wrinkled. She'd been charged with false reporting and child endangerment, was awaiting trial, facing potential prison time. Let me in, she said. We need to talk. Marcus almost refused. But curiosity and the need for closure won. He led her into the living room but didn't offer her a seat, didn't offer comfort. Why are you here, Evelyn? I need you to drop the charges. The audacity stunned him. You destroyed my reputation, nearly sent me to prison, traumatized your daughter, and you want me to help you? I didn't have a choice. You had 1,000 choices. Marcus's control finally snapped. You could have been honest about the affair. You could have filed for divorce like an adult. You could have protected Amara instead of using her as a shield for your own guilt. Every step of this disaster was a choice you made. You threatened to tell Mama. After you betrayed me. After you fucked your brother in our home while I was at work trying to provide for this family. After you made our 9-year-old daughter complicit in your lies. Evelyn flinched but pushed forward. If you drop the charges, I'll sign over custody. Full custody. No contest. Amara can be yours legally. I'm already getting custody. Your mother signed the consent papers. Mama did what? Evelyn's face went white. She chose Amara's welfare over protecting you. Something you should have done from the beginning. Evelyn sank onto the couch, the fight draining out of her. I've lost everything. Yes, Marcus said without sympathy. You have. I loved you, you know. In my own way. Your way was toxic. Maybe. Evelyn looked up at him with desperate eyes. But I love Amara. I know I don't deserve to be her mother anymore. I know I've destroyed that. But please, don't let her grow up thinking I'm a monster. Tell her I was broken. Tell her I made terrible mistakes. But tell her I loved her. Marcus considered this. Stoic philosophy taught that revenge was poison to the soul, that justice should be tempered with mercy when possible. Evelyn had committed terrible wrongs, but she was also a person, flawed, damaged, human. I'll tell her you were complicated, Marcus said finally. I'll tell her you made mistakes but that love and damage can exist simultaneously. But Evelyn, you need to understand something, you don't get to be in her life anymore. Not until she's an adult and chooses to seek you out. That's non-negotiable. I understand. Tears tracked down Evelyn's face. Will you tell her I'm sorry? No. If you're really sorry, you'll tell her yourself someday. When you've done the work to understand why you did what you did. When you can take full responsibility without excuses. Until then, sorry is just a word. Evelyn stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. You were too good for me, Marcus. I knew that from the beginning. Maybe that's why I sabotaged it. Because I knew I didn't deserve someone who loved me the way you did. Self-awareness doesn't erase harm. I know. She walked out into the darkness, and Marcus closed the door on that chapter of his life. He stood in the empty house and felt the weight of everything that had happened settle into his bones. He'd been accused, vindicated, granted custody, and offered revenge all in the span of 2 weeks. He'd learned that goodness wasn't armor, that love didn't guarantee loyalty, that family was a construction that could be built and destroyed with equal speed. But he'd also learned that he was stronger than he'd known. That he could stand in the fire and not be consumed. That Marcus Freeman, stepfather, educator, good man, could survive having everything stripped away and still choose to stand up, show up, and be the parent Amara needed. The Stoics taught that we don't control what happens to us, only how we respond. Marcus had responded with discipline, with strategic thinking, with fierce love for a child who wasn't biologically his but was his in every way that mattered. He picked up his phone and called Patricia Chin. When can Amara come home? Paperwork should clear by Friday. You'll have legal custody pending the final adoption hearing in 6 months. Friday, Marcus repeated. 4 more days. He could survive 4 more days. Marcus? Patricia's voice held rare warmth. You did good. Not many people would fight this hard for a child who isn't biologically theirs. She's mine in every way that counts. I know. That's why you won. Marcus hung up and walked through the house, planning. Amara's room needed fresh sheets, new stuffed animals to replace the one seized as evidence, a sense of safety rebuilt from scratch. The kitchen needed her favorite foods. The walls needed to remember laughter instead of accusations. He had 4 days to transform a crime scene back into a home. He got to work. Friday, November 15, 2025. Marcus stood in the driveway at 3 p.m., watching the social worker's car pull up with Amara in the back seat. The girl emerged slowly, clutching the small duffel bag that contained everything from her foster placement, her face uncertain. Hey, baby girl, Marcus said softly. She ran to him. He caught her, lifted her, held her while she cried into his shoulder. Relief and fear and confusion all mixed together. The social worker watched with professional compassion, then handed Marcus a folder of documents, instructions, therapy referrals. She's going to need a lot of support, the woman said. Trauma like this doesn't disappear quickly. I know. Good luck, Mr. Freeman. They went inside together, Amara still clinging to his hand. Marcus had transformed the house in 4 days. New photos on the walls showing just him and Amara, her favorite dinner cooking in the oven, a banner hung in the living room that said, "Welcome home." Is this really my home now? Amara asked. Forever. Forever, Marcus promised. That evening, they ate dinner together, macaroni and cheese, her favorite, with green beans she'd eat under protest. They talked carefully around the trauma, focusing on mundane things. School would start again Monday, she'd have therapy twice a week, Grandma Dorothy wanted to visit next weekend. What about Mama? Amara asked, pushing food around her plate. Marcus chose his words with surgical precision. Your Mama is dealing with consequences of her choices. She won't be living here anymore. But she loves you, in her own way. Will I see her again? Maybe someday, when you're older. If you want to. But for now, it's just you and me, baby girl. Amara absorbed this, her face complex with emotions Marcus couldn't fully read. Finally, she asked the question he'd been dreading, am I bad? What? No. Amara, no. But I lied about you. I said you did bad things and you didn't. That makes me bad. Marcus knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. You were put in an impossible situation by adults who should have protected you. You were scared and confused, and you did what you thought you had to do to keep your mama safe. That doesn't make you bad. That makes you a kid who needed help. But people believed me. They thought you were a bad person because of me. And now they know the truth. Amara, listen, what happened was terrible. But it doesn't define you. You get to decide who you become. You get to learn and grow and choose better as you get older. That's all any of us can do. She hugged him then, fierce and desperate. I'm glad you're my daddy. I'm glad you're my daughter. The weeks that followed were difficult. Amara had nightmares, attended therapy, struggled with trust issues that manifested in testing Marcus's boundaries constantly. She'd break rules deliberately, then watch his face to see if he'd abandon her. She'd lie about small things, whether she'd brushed her teeth, finished homework, as if expecting him to overreact. Marcus met each challenge with patient consistency. He established clear rules and clear consequences. He never yelled, never threatened, never wavered in his presence. Slowly, painfully, Amara began to believe that he wasn't going anywhere. Dorothy visited every other weekend, their relationship cautiously rebuilding. She taught Amara about their family history, the stories of strength and survival that ran through Watson blood. Marcus listened and learned alongside Amara, understanding that his daughter needed both her immediate present and her ancestral past. Evelyn's trial happened in February 2026. She pleaded guilty to false reporting and child endangerment, received 2 years probation, mandatory counseling, and a permanent restriction preventing unsupervised contact with Amara. Marcus attended the sentencing hearing with Amara's therapist, who'd advised him on how to process the legal proceedings. Evelyn looked at him once across the courtroom, her expression carrying everything they'd been and lost. Marcus nodded acknowledgement. Not forgiveness, but recognition that they'd both survive what they'd done to each other. The adoption finalized in May 2026. Judge Harrison, a black woman in her 60s, reviewed the file with careful attention, then looked at Marcus over her glasses. Mr. Freeman, do you understand that adoption severs all legal ties between Amara and her biological mother? I do, Your Honor. And you're prepared to be this child's father in all legal and practical senses? I've been her father for 7 years. This just makes it official. The judge smiled, rare, warm, genuine. Then it's my honor to grant this adoption. Amara Watson is now legally Amara Freeman. May you both find healing and joy together. In the courthouse hallway afterward, Amara held her new birth certificate, official document listing Marcus Elijah Freeman as her father, no step prefix, no asterisk. She traced his name with her finger. Does this mean you can never leave me? She asked. I could never leave you anyway, baby girl. But yes. Legally, forever, completely, I'm your dad. Good. She tucked the certificate into her backpack with the same care she'd once packed her journal. Because I don't want any other dad. Late August 2026, Marcus sat on the porch swing while Amara practiced violin inside, painfully, enthusiastically, imperfectly. The sun set orange and pink over the Georgia fields, and he thought about the year that had passed since Dorothy's visit catalyzed everything. He'd lost a marriage, nearly lost his freedom, been accused of monstrous acts he'd never committed. He'd learned that people he trusted could betray him, that love wasn't sufficient protection against damage, that biological ties meant less than showing up consistently over time. But he'd also gained legal fatherhood of the child he'd always loved as his own. He'd discovered reserves of strength and discipline he hadn't known he possessed. He'd learned to implement Stoic principles not as abstract philosophy but as survival strategy, controlling what he could control, accepting what he couldn't, responding to catastrophe with disciplined action rather than emotional collapse. Most importantly, he'd learned that family was a choice renewed daily through action, not a status granted once and maintained passively. Gerald wandered over from the neighboring property, 2 beers in hand. They sat together in comfortable silence, listening to Amara's violin create something that wasn't quite music but held the promise of becoming it. "She's getting better," Gerald observed. "Slowly. That's the only way anyone gets better. Slowly, with practice, over time." Marcus accepted the beer, took a long drink. "You think she'll be okay? Long term?" "I think she's got you. That's the best chance any kid gets, one adult who shows up consistently and gives a damn. Even though I'm not her biological father. Especially because you're not. You chose her, Marcus. That's more powerful than biology. Biology is an accident. Choice is deliberate." They drank in silence as stars emerged overhead. Finally, Marcus asked the question that had haunted him. "Did I do the right thing? Fighting for her? Or did I make everything worse by not just walking away?" "You think walking away would have helped her?" "Maybe. Maybe she would have been better with Dorothy, or she would have been in foster care permanently because Evelyn's facing criminal charges and Dorothy's too old to take on a 9-year-old full-time." "Stop torturing yourself. You fought for your daughter. You won. Accept it." Marcus nodded, trying to internalize that acceptance. The Stoics taught that peace came from acknowledging reality as it was, not as you wished it to be. This was his reality, Marcus Freeman, 41 years old, single father to a daughter who shared none of his DNA but all of his commitment. Amara's violin stopped. She emerged onto the porch, expression cautiously pleased. "Did you hear? I got through the whole song without messing up." "I heard. Sounded beautiful." She settled between them on the swing, small body warm against Marcus's side. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby. I wrote something in therapy today. Want to hear?" "Always." She pulled out a folded paper, read in the careful voice of a child choosing words deliberately. "My father taught me that love is a verb, not a noun. It's something you do, every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. He taught me that family is built, not born. And he taught me that I'm stronger than the worst things that happen to me." Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. "You write that yourself?" "Mostly. My therapist helped with some words. But the ideas are mine." She looked up at him. "Is it true, though? That I'm stronger than the bad stuff?" "Absolutely true. You're the strongest person I know." "Stronger than you?" "Way stronger." She smiled, the first fully genuine smile he'd seen in months, and nestled against him. They swung gently, 3 people finding peace in ordinary evening quiet. Later that night, after Amara was asleep, Marcus sat in his workshop and thought about the title that might summarize his story. Stepfather kills his daughter to hide their awful secret from Grandma. Except the awful secret wasn't abuse, it was Evelyn's affair, her betrayal, her willingness to sacrifice everyone else to protect herself. And what died wasn't Amara physically, but the false narrative of abuse, the lies, the accusations that would have buried Marcus if truth hadn't survived. He'd killed nothing except the danger of permanent separation from his daughter. He'd hidden nothing except his pain from Amara while he fought to protect her. And Dorothy, eventually, had learned the truth despite everyone's attempts to manage her perception. The story wasn't the one people might expect from that title. But it was the true one, messy, complicated, ultimately redemptive. Marcus picked up a piece of sandpaper and began smoothing the edges of a wooden jewelry box he was making for Amara's 10th birthday. The physical work soothed him, hands moving in practiced patterns while his mind settled. This was his life now, single father, educator, man rebuilding after catastrophe. He'd survived false accusations, legal battles, emotional devastation. He'd emerged with his integrity intact and his daughter legally, permanently his. The Stoics taught that virtue was the only true good, that external circumstances, wealth, reputation, relationships, were preferred indifference, valuable but not essential to a good life. Marcus had lost almost all his preferred indifference and discovered that virtue, showing up, fighting for what was right, loving consistently despite pain, was indeed sufficient. He would raise his daughter. He would teach her about resilience, forgiveness, the difference between justice and revenge. He would help her understand that her mother was broken, not evil, and that complicated truths were more honest than simple narratives. And maybe, eventually, Amara would grow into a woman who could look back on this darkness and recognize how it shaped her toward light. That was all any parent could hope for. So here's my question for you: what would you have done? If you discovered your partner's betrayal, would you have fought for custody of a child who wasn't biologically yours? Or would you have walked away, let blood relatives handle it, protected yourself from the legal and emotional devastation? If you were falsely accused of something monstrous, how would you respond? With rage and revenge, or with the disciplined strategy Marcus chose? Would you have accepted Evelyn's apology, or held firm to consequences? And here's the deeper question: do you believe that chosen family, stepparents, adoptive parents, people who commit to children without biological connection, can love as deeply as biological parents? Or is there something fundamentally different, fundamentally less, about relationships not rooted in DNA? Marcus Freeman would tell you that showing up matters more than showing blood. That 7 years of midnight fevers and homework help and bedtime stories count for more than genetic lottery. But that's easy to say when you're not the one fighting for custody, facing prison, rebuilding trust with a traumatized child. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have fought like Marcus did? Would you have forgiven like Dorothy eventually did? Or would you have chosen differently? And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about the nature of family, the power of choice, the possibility of redemption after betrayal, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. These stories matter. These conversations matter. Your engagement helps us continue telling complex, honest narratives about love, loss, and the messy reality of being human. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss future stories. And if you have your own experience with blended families, false accusations, or choosing family over biology, share it below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Thank you for listening. Thank you for thinking. And thank you for remembering that every family's story is more complicated than any title can capture. Until next time, stay strong, stay questioning, and remember that showing up is the most powerful choice we make.